Favorites of yours was in the beginning also fulasnatamnian, that is to say, they had to exist until their body Kesjen was completely coated in them and perfected up to the required gradation of reason, and that afterwards, when very abnormal conditions of ordinary being existence began to be established there, great nature was constrained to actualize their presences and also the subsequent process of their existence on the principle of itoklanos, that is, according to the results of certain surrounding causes. Thereafter, one of these causes has also been the degree of the density of vibrations of their second being food. That is, as they themselves would say, the degree of condensation of the air they breathe. The point is that this cosmic formation, which serves as the second being food for beings, is also composed according to the second fundamental common cosmic law of the sacred Triamazikamno, and is also actualized by means of its three heterogeneous cosmic substances. And namely, the first is the emanation of the sun of that system in which this same definite cosmic arising serves as the second food for beings. The second are the substances transformed on that planet itself on which the beings fed by this food exist. And the third are those substances which are transformed through the other planets of this system and which come to the given planet through their radiations. And so, the process of fusion of all those substances required for the normal formation and existence of beings, which are transformed by the planet itself, and which actualize the second holy force of the sacred Triamazikamno, can proceed in the correspondingly required definite proportion only within certain limits of the atmosphere from the surface of the planets. Because owing to the second grade cosmic law called teniktoa, or as your favorites would call it, law of gravity, these substances cannot penetrate beyond a definite height of the atmosphere. In my opinion, you can yourself apprehend all the subsequent ensuing consequences of this question which I've just now brought to light, and compose data in yourself for your own opinion of the significance of this invention of theirs. I think, my boy, that I have now already fully satisfied your curiosity concerning these dollar fox-trotting followers of what is called Christian Science. In the name of objective justice, it now only remains for me to remark that whatever they may turn into in the future, I had, however, during my existence among them, the possibility of inwardly resting, and for this I ought now to express to them my sincere thanks. And you, just you, my heir, to whom has already been transmitted and will be transmitted by inheritance everything acquired by me during my long existence. Of course, only insofar as you yourself will deserve it by your own conscientious being existence and honorable service to the all-common Father Maintainer, our endlessness. I command you, if you happen for some reason or other to be on the planet Earth, to visit without fail the city of New York, or if by that time this city should no longer exist, then at least stop at that place where it was situated, and to utter aloud, "In this place my beloved grandfather, my just teacher Beelzebub, pleasantly passed a few moments of his existence." I even charge you, of course again as the heir to whom, as in general, will devolve the fulfillment of the obligations which his predecessor took upon himself and which for some reason or other were left unfulfilled, specially to turn your attention to and to elucidate a question which greatly interested me, and which I personally was unable to elucidate as it was still premature to do so. That is to say, I charge you to elucidate for yourself into what a maleficent form for their descendants, if of course by that time their descendant and still continue to arise, will the results have become molded of the disease very widespread at that time, which one of their misters, by name Onensen, called writing itch. And indeed, my boy, having then during my stay there a more or less close relationship with many of them, I very soon found out that almost every one of them either had already written a book, or at that time was writing one, or was getting ready quickly to burst into authorship. Although this peculiar disease was then, as I've already said, widespread among almost all the beings of this continent, and moreover among the beings of both sexes and without distinction of age, yet among the beings at the beginning of responsible age, that is, as they themselves say, among the youth, and particularly among those who had many pimples on their faces, it was for some reason or other, as it is said, epidemical. I must further remark, in just this connection, that there flourished that specific particularity of the strangeness of the common psyche of these peculiar beings who have taken your fancy, which has already long existed in their collective existence, and which has been formulated by the following words: the concentration of interests on an idea which has accidentally become the question of the day. Here also, many of them who turned out to be a little, as it is said there, more cunning, and in whom the data for the being impulse called instinctively to refrain from all manifestations which may lead surrounding beings similar to oneself into error, were more atrophied, organized various what are called schools, and composed all kinds of manuals into which much attention was given to showing in detail just what the sequence of words should be, so that all compositions should be better perceived and assimilated by the reader. And thus all those attending these schools, and all readers of these manuals, being themselves in regard to being and in regard to information concerning reality, exactly such types as our teacher Mullah Nasruddin defined by the words nullities with an atmosphere of unendurable vibrations, began, according to these indications, to wiseacre. And since in the first place, thanks to various other abnormalities fixed in the conditions of the ordinary existence of the beings of this new grouping, the process of reading has previously in general become an organic need of theirs, and secondly, that it was possible to appreciate the contents of any composition exclusively only by reading it through. And all the other beings of this continent, seduced, what is more, by all kinds of, as they say there, loud titles, read and read. Then, parallel with this, it was definitely noticeable how their mentation, which had already, so to say, become diluted without this, continued to become more diluted and still more diluted. I did not lightly say that if by that time their descendants still continue to arise, because among other things I then noticed that same extraordinary particularity in respect of the consequences of this new formation of the planetary body of beings of the female sex, which I had already once noticed long before in the process of the ordinary existence of these strange three-brained beings. And parallel with this, I minutely constated, among other special observations, the consequences ensuing from this particularity. This extraordinary fact occurred there before the loss of the continent Atlantis, in the process of the existence of a small group of three-brained beings who were concentrated from various large groupings of that time, and who existed in isolation on the then famous island called Balachanira, situated on the west of Atlantis, and which was engulfed within the planet at the same time as Atlantis itself. The continuation of the race of this small group ceased, owing to this same strange particularity of the formation of the planetary body of the beings of the female sex. And this form of cessation of the race was then called by the learned members of the society Achaldam, Des Subcentozeroso. This extraordinary particularity was that several centuries before the final cessation of their race, there began gradually to narrow in the beings of the female sex what is called the pelvis. The progressiveness of this narrowing was such that 2 centuries before the final cessation of their race, they were already producing all the accidental conceptions in them and the, so to say, haphazard forming of these conceptions for their appearance, as is said there, in God's world, by the means then called citric, namely by means of what is now called Caesarean operations. At this point of Beelzebub's tales, what is called a cross-current, or agitation, began in the ether, which penetrated the whole of the ship Karnak. This signified that the passengers of the ship Karnak were summoned to the Jamjampal, that is, that refectory of the ship in which all the passengers together periodically fed on the second and first being foods. So Beelzebub, Hassein, and Ahun ceased their conversation and hastily went off to the Jamjampal.